So you guys want to talk about today? You had a sign of mind, Eric. Well, what are you drinking?
Your cappuccino?
Yeah, the cappuccino. I'm looking forward to seeing the size of this cappuccino, because half an hour ago you said you started making it.
Well, it was some other things came up. We had somebody. I've had a bunch of contractors come over to the house to do work. We have a lot of stuff happening, a lot of jobs being done. So I'm always letting people in and out. So the cappuccino didn't take that long to make, but this one it's actually a really special cappuccino. I've been making my cappuccinos with goat colostrum.
Ah, yeah, I saw the picture you had on Twitter of the bottle of colostrum.
Yeah, it's so basically it's still 3/4 milk and then a quarter colostrum, but because I think if you did straight colostrum, it's a little lower in fat, so it wouldn't.
Can you explain to people listening who don't know what that is, what it is?
Oh, people don't know what colostrum is?
Some people don't, yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically the first milk that comes out when any mammal gives birth and begins nursing their young. It's like this hyper concentrated, really nutrient dense milk that comes out, and it's really almost thick, and it lasts for about 1 to 2 days, at least in humans, and then after that it's just normal milk. But it's really high in it's like basically 3 or 4 times the amount of B vitamins, minerals like calcium, magnesium. It's really high in these immune. It's kind of like a way to program the immune system of the new baby. It's full in all these proteins that kind of teach the new immune system how to respond to the environment. And so a lot of people use it for just general immune health. I'm using it because I had some I forgot about. It was in the freezer, and it tastes really good.
So the purpose of it is it's not just that it's not just like a boost of a lot of nutrients. It's also to trigger a response in the immune system.
Yes, and obviously this is tailored to the goat, so I don't know how much it helps the immune system of a human, but there's a lot of crossover. Evolution's pretty redundant. Like they like to reuse a lot of proteins and stuff.
And
so.
goat milk's much closer to human milk anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, goat milk's a little closer. Yeah. So, the reason why I started doing this is I remember when I lived in LA, I used to buy this raw milk from the farmer's market, and this is before a lot of regulations were hitting, and so they had this really special milk that was it was milk spiked with colostrum, and I remember I was getting that, and I made just enormous gains in the gym when I was drinking that. I would drink a couple gallons a week, and it seemed like I was making really good progress on my weightlifting. And so and then they discontinued it because they were cracking down on raw milk and colostrum, and so so I'm hoping to return to it now. But it's also it's really good. It made a really nice really good foamy head on the cappuccino.
There's some actionable advice for someone who's listening. A couple of gallons of colostrum.
So did you...
What about you guys? What are you drinking?
I'm actually drinking, so it's Friday night here now.
What are you drinking?
I'm actually drinking red wine now.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Nothing fancy. I'm not a wine guy. It's like a cheap red wine that we got from it was a cheap red wine that we got from a supermarket for food, but it actually turned out it's pretty nice. It's a Bordeaux. That's as far as I know. And but it's surprisingly nice. But I don't have a very well refined palate, so I'm not someone to take advice about wine from.
I think that's good enough with wine. That's what I say. Tastes good. I like it. Yeah, I think that's enough.
I mean, I could be snobbish about whiskey, but not wine. I just I'm rough when it comes to wine. What about you, Keith?
Water with some lime in it. That's it. Nothing fancy.
Boring.
You look like you've just been training, Keith, yeah?
I just always look like this.
Okay. Just walking around pumped constantly.
What about you, Eric? Did that shirt come with no sleeves, or you cut them off yourself?
No, this is it came with no sleeves. This is from the Renaissance Fair.
Okay.
But it did have string here, like binding this up, but I didn't really like it, so I just opened it up.
Yeah, too wide.
The string bar stuff, they're drinking all the colostrum.
Exactly.
Yeah. Today finally feels like a spring day. It's like 70 degrees. Not hardly any clouds in the sky. Really beautiful. So we finally got a nice day, and I think the temperatures are supposed to stay like this. So you can just tell when you get these days in the beginning of spring when the weather kind of pops and just elevates your mood and you feel good.
We're having the opposite. We're having a cold snap here where there's snow again in the mountains. Everybody's like overly dressed, and even I haven't been walking around with a hat on in the house. So cold inside the house. You're opening the doors to get the heat in a little bit during the day, but it's been really cold, surprising. But soon it'll be very warm, and I'll miss this, so I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, I don't miss the cold ever. So what are we talking about? Eric, you had a topic that you said you've been thinking about.
Yeah, when I say thinking about it, just kind of popped into my head, once.
That's thinking.
Yeah, that's how they work. Yeah, it's just kind of making the it's not a new topic. It's something that people talk about a lot, but I think it's an important one, and it's something that I always remind myself every once in a while. It's to make like all this time we spend online, talking to people, making friends, consuming information, advice, and whatnot. It's important to make it all real. Don't just kind of. It's important to kind of integrate what you're consuming in the online world with the real world, because the weird thing is that I think a lot of us who spend a decent amount of time online do so because you can get, there's a level of, I don't want to say sophistication, but there's just a different level or strata of info and advice and perspectives you get online, and as opposed to quote unquote the normie perspective. And I think it's important to not just kind of wallow in the, what's the word? How would I say this? Wallow in the sort of novelty of all the interesting things you can learn online. You have to actually make use of it. You have to bring it into being. You have to, integrate it into your life. And I know this is a big thing with self-improvement content, things like the Tim Ferriss podcast or anything like that, any kind of listicle that you read about, how to optimize your workspace or your workday, things like that. Morning routines is you get this when you read content like that and it really jives with you, you get this burst of dopamine, because it's almost like you're imagining that you're doing the thing that you're reading about, like you kind of trick yourself into thinking that you're making some step forward into improving yourself, but really you've just consumed some content. And now if you take that and you actually put it into practice, and you start doing the things that you're learning about, then that's a great, that's the key. That's a great way to integrate the online world with your real life. But I think it can be all too easy to consume content, maybe, make notes about what you're going to do, how you're going to change your morning routine, or how you're going to start working out. And then you don't actually do it. So you get this empty dopamine burst. And then rather than using that dopamine, because dopamine is a movement motivator, it's what kind of compels an organism to move through the universe, to do things, to act. if you use that instead of actually using it to start doing the things that you want to start doing, instead you move on to, you scroll down the timeline, you move on to the next article, you start the next podcast and start consuming some other content telling you to do this novel thing. And then you just go down the line of never actually putting anything into practice, but you're kind of feeding your brain this drip of low calorie dopamine, dopamine that never leads to anything. And I say this with such precision and detail because I've been guilty of it myself before. That's the thing. I think we all are. And so, yeah, so I just wanted to throw this out. What are some ways that people can actually start, consume this content and make it work for you? Bring the online into the real world and integrate it. I have some ideas, but I'd like to hear from you. Other than part of the answer is just do it, just kind of force yourself. Be like, okay, you want to do this thing, just do it. I mean, that's one level, but I'd be curious to hear what you guys think.
So what you're saying is like in terms of evolution or whatever, the person has the urge to do something, and then because there's no content, you would after the urge is then you beginning to do the thing, and now you get the dopamine because you're now doing the thing. Whereas now we have this layer of content, this sort of simulation in between, where you get the urge to do it, and then so rather than go and do it, I'll do some research on it, or I'll find out what it would be like to do that, or I'll imagine in the perfect result. Now you get the hit, and part of you feels like you've done it now. You've started doing it, so you're like, you now no longer want to do it. Because like I noticed that before, if you have a goal and you tell someone about the goal, it depends who you tell in the circumstances. But in general, if you blab too much about something you're doing, you kind of lose something of the energy goes away of what you're working on. In general, not always. So like the trick then would be not just, you're saying just do it, but it's also not do the research thing necessarily, or start doing it, then research, and then back to doing it. Make the doing it first, even if you don't know what you're doing, because then the dopamine hit or however is, you're getting it from the action, not the simulation of the action. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I can't say it's true all the time, but I try to make a more concerted effort to do this is like, if I share something, I'll always try to share it after the fact. Like I've done it already, and then I share it, not like talking about doing it. And then, I mean, like I said, I can't say I've been true to that in every situation, but most of the time, like that's what I try to lean towards or consciously think of. Like I'd rather do it and then share my experience about what I did, as opposed to try to, I don't know, think about or come up with an idea of what to do online.
Yeah.
What about someone who follows Keith and they see you doing the thing and talking about the thing? How would you convince them, or what advice would you give them to if it's something that they want to try? How do you convince them to actually try it without getting too deep in the weeds and getting tripped up on their own dopamine?
That's a good question. I mean, the immediate thing that comes to, nothing I do really requires that much planning or anything like that. So like to just do it and try it out, and like I wish I had a better answer than that. But like at some point, people just you got to take the step, right? You got to do the action, and it's up to the person to finally just like commit to doing something and show up for yourself in that way. One thing that you can do, like if you want to give yourself a little incentive, like if you're curious about like take for example the maces that I exercise with. one, they're not that expensive relatively. Two, you could probably get a sledgehammer for even cheaper than you would buy a mace for. And the very act of like going and getting something, now like you are incentivized to at least use it at least once and try it out. So give yourself some type of little like I don't know, use the dopamine in a positive way. Like to buy yourself something new to be able to use it. Like now you want to use it because that's but you're also doing like you're actively going and moving and setting that that new pattern into play, like starting it, getting the engine revving. Yep. So then you could build off of that. And the biggest thing is to get the get that initial spark. Like jump over the first hurdle, make it a small hurdle, and then lots of times once you start an action, other actions are easier to do. That's what I mean. It was something recently. I think we were kind of joking around about off of a thread that Alex did, I think. But I said if I had $1 for every experiment with food or supplements that I tried out based on something you vaguely mentioned, Erik, I'd have a lot of dollars because to at least experiment with these things and try them out on your own is like pretty cheap, and some of the stuff is good and you just find out for yourself. So I don't have to take your word for it now. I will in most cases, but I could just see for myself whether I like it, if it's if I feel like it's something I want to continue to do or try. And yeah, it's there's no simpler way to put it other than just you got to take more initiative to do it. Like if you see something you like, go for it. I think not a lot of people, not to say not a lot of people do that. People do that all the time, but it's I think the platform itself, Twitter or any online platform, is more driven to just have you continue to write more words on the screen and less to take actions in your own life. I mean, that's just the idea. That's just how the platform works. But if you want to be smart about how you're using it, ideally you're learning something, and part of learning something is trying it out for yourself and seeing how it works. So I don't know, there's not some like secret answer, I don't think, to this. It's just like you got to go for it. You got to try different stuff. And yeah,
there's a trap that people need to avoid. There's like a trap where they decide they're going to try something. I've done this lots. And then you spend ages trying to find out if you're buying something, you're desperate to buy the right one. So like you spend ages asking people the right one and no, recommend this to me. And, just don't be afraid of buying the wrong thing, because now you're in action. So you buy the wrong mace or whatever. It's not the right size or weight or whatever. Or
I did that.
Well, exactly. So, but now you have one and you're like,
I couldn't move it.
Okay, perfect.
So I had to get smaller ones because it was too.
I'll either get bigger and stronger, or I'll get a smaller mace. Smaller mace, probably easier. But yeah, that's it. Just because now you're in motion, because now you've got this wrong thing there. Oh, I'll get a better version. So like, what's the right? Which company's nutrition should I buy for this thing? Just buy one. Now you're someone who does that stuff, and then who experiments with this, whatever it is. And then get a better one later, obviously within reason, money-wise for people. But it's that's the trap that will trick you and make you procrastinate or just avoid it. Or now you've used up so much dopamine because the expert guy is giving you his advice of the best one in that. Or worse, 2 or 3 have given you contradictory advice, and now you're like, this is like way far away from the original impulse to do the thing. You're like levels away from it. It's like it's going far, making it less and less real if the goal is to make it real.
Yeah, that's one of the things, or kind of what I'm driving at is like, you have to take if you're going back and forth and researching and trying to find the best review or something, you're offloading all that experience onto someone else. And you're saying, I'm not going to be able to make my own decision on this. I need somebody else to make the decision for me. And it's just that, is it decision fatigue? Is that what they call it? Like, I guess that's having to make too many decisions, but.
Analysis paralysis by analysis, or analysis.
Analysis paralysis. That's pretty much the core of it. Like, are you going to offload it onto somebody else, or are you just going to try it out yourself and see if it works, and if it doesn't, and you got to be willing to fail at some point. And I don't mean like fail, but just like make a mistake. It happens all the time. I made a mistake. The picture I shared of the kimchi and the leftover beef heart, that was awful. I tasted it. I thought it would taste great, but that was terrible that I made today. So I still ate it.
But that's the other thing you were saying about Twitter. It rewards you for being right and talking about things that you're right. It doesn't reward you for, here's a fuck up, this is terrible. It doesn't reward you that. It rewards you for saying some over the top way of like just judgment. This is the best one. Everyone's an idiot if they don't do this one. That's what gets retweeted or whatever, isn't it?
Yeah. But the special thing I think about Twitter is that I guess it's good and bad, but it can really compel people to just like to try weird things. You'll see a lot of people sharing, memes like, "Oh, what's your source for that claim?" And it's like, "Oh, my Twitter friend told me." So I don't know what the maybe it's like the mimetic power of Twitter, but there is a level where it can eliminate that middleman, that decision maker, and it can kind of eliminate decision fatigue, because it can. I know I have people that contact me and they're like, "Oh, I tried that crazy ass astounding thing that you mentioned and it's great, it's working out." Whereas I've been telling the same crazy shit to my friends in real life for the last 12 years, and almost nobody takes me up on it. But there's something about Twitter where maybe it's just the fact that it's in text form, and we assign some level of authority to text, especially if it's just short, punchy, tweets, where people take the advice of total strangers, and for better or worse. So I think that, so it can really be a good. I think Twitter can really help people fight that decision fatigue, that tendency to wallow in dopamine without taking action. But you gotta really curate your feed. You gotta follow the right people. And I don't have an answer. I mean, besides just follow the people in here. That's part of it,
Yeah. You got to follow us at least.
So, like, if you think about how people join, they often, you get into like you're looking for the insight Twitter, platitude Twitter. You're kind of, or you think you're consuming like aphorisms and you're learning things and stuff, but really it's just you get caught up in the platitude thing at the start. Then if you're tough, smart, then you gravitate away from that, and then you start looking for real things and people talking about real things. Then the numbers of the traffic and the retweeting and stuff for the things you become interested in later are way less than those things. Mm. But it must be because you're just you're getting the dopamine hit when you get these things. You get this little burst of excitement, as if you've implemented this piece of wisdom or whatever it is. And it's only later you realize that you have to do something in the world and then come back to Twitter. So like I was thinking that when you mentioned this topic, Eric, is there's something to do with time as well. If you're online all the time, much harder to make it real, because just through sheer time, the main thing in your life is being on it, and then you go off in it. Like, now I'll go out, take a break for the real world, and then I'll come back to the real thing. It's like the greater and the lesser is, the greater is your online. So you can't help but make the real world stuff seem smaller, because it's just the sheer time you're on it. So you kind of have to reverse it and
Yeah,
spend
you
more
weighed the
time.
scale too heavily in one direction.
You need to flip it the other way so that it feels like the online is doing the new thing. You're going, I'm going to go online and share this, or I'm going to go online and find something out or share things. And then the base level is the real world. And I don't know if you can do that without time, without it's just sheer time of one or the other. I don't know what the cutoff point is, how many hours, or one way or the other. I don't know. But there's definitely something to that, because periods have gone where I'm not on Twitter more. I will be outside more. You just am. But you don't know if you're outside more. That's why you're not on Twitter. It's hard. You don't know. And then it's very easy to, if you've got something to do, and if you're like online for like 10, 12 hours a day, try to do something for a long time, you just get sucked into that, and it can be weeks before you feel like an outside guy again. You're like a room. I think of myself as like room guy and outside sun guy. Like, and I'm just they'll flip at some point.
Yeah. The one thing that you mentioned before, Eric, about how it's strange, like you could suggest something to your friends in real life, and they're like, nah, I'm not going to listen to it. But you say something crazy online, and like you get a dozen people that are like, oh yeah, what's that? Tell me about it. One, I think, like, at least for me, like there's such a difference of opinion, or like diversity of thought, like with my friends in life, because lots of times it's not like we didn't become friends based on the shared, I mean, there are shared interests, but it's like a lot of friends I either went to college with, I grew up with, there's some type of like local connection. It's not necessarily that
they're not niche friends. You didn't meet them in a niche online, so like you only know them in this niche, or like a guy at work, but you've never been out for a drink with him or whatever else. Yeah.
So I think part of that is that like I think it is like, okay, I could trust that guy because I know he has a niche that has knowledge and has experience in. But if your friends in real life aren't into that same niche, then they're just like, well, Eric does his weird thing, or Keith does his weird thing, and that's fine for him. I'll take a little bit of that here and there, but I'm not gonna just trust everything he says. I'd have my own niche that I'm interested in.
Oh fuck, Keith's talking about maces again. Fuck's
yeah. It's not maces, but it's like other weird shit. They're like, roll my eyes at this guy right now. It's something that I said. There was a conversation I think that we had in Hawaii one night, and I said, I was like, this is a conversation I could only have with you guys, because if I had tried to have this conversation with like my friends at home, they're just not going to get it. Like there's a certain aspect of like the online world or that community that you're a part of, that like if you're a part of it, you'll understand it. But if you're not, you're just like, I don't really get it. Which is fine. Like people only have a certain bandwidth to absorb. They got their own stuff that they're interested in and doing, and there's not necessarily a lot of overlap. But I think that's also like a good thing. Like it's good to have friends that aren't interested in the same stuff you're interested in. But it also means that like a lot of what you say is not going to hit with them. Like they're just not going to appreciate some of the stuff that you have. And it's I don't know, like as these two, obviously, like I'm just thinking on like a historical timeline, you're always like, people are always going to have in life friends, and then it seems like this weird thing is starting to grow now where you have online friends too, and you're going to have to live or dance in both worlds, live in both worlds. Like you're just going to have to become a bit more have the ability to do both, grow that ability.
I've heard a couple of people on Twitter in our group talking about having a Twitter table at their wedding.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I could see that. I could imagine that for definite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's also going to be like the weird guy outcast table at the wedding. or not. I don't know. Maybe it'll be the life of the party.
What are you trying to say about your mutuals?
I'm just saying you guys aren't for everybody.
Okay, we're no maces to your wedding. Cool, we get it.
How long?
Yeah, but yeah, that's in terms of like how to. I mean, to back to the original question, like how do you bring what you learn online back into your real life? Like, yeah, it's trying things out. Maybe it is trying to. That's kind of a test, right? To see, like, obviously, if you're in this world where you have a niche that you like online, that's kind of a test to see if it really works, if you could get it to stick with someone else that isn't in that niche. Like if you have a friend that is maybe like, I don't know, if you could introduce an idea that you get online to do something, and you try to integrate it with someone that's not online, like that could be an interesting experiment just to find out, like, is it just the product of me being in this place and having a demented mind that likes online niche stuff, or is it something real that other people would appreciate and they just haven't had the exposure to the same information, and that's why they don't like it. But yeah, that's instead of just doing the thing yourself, see if you can take whatever you've learned online and introduce it to someone else and see if they will integrate it into their life some way. A friend, a family member, whoever. It's an interesting thing. I think it happens a little bit with like my friends. Like I'll bring up some crazy shit that I learned somewhere, and I think out of 100 things I say, maybe like they'll pick up on like 2 or 3 of them that they'll kind of like and ask me more about, or like try to do themselves or something. And but yeah, maybe that's your hit rate. For doing that, you just gotta bombard people with ideas that you think are good, and they won't pick up on all of them, but there will eventually be a couple of them that do grow beyond the online world and people start using in their day-to-day lives because they see benefit from it.
Yeah. Well, another thing I would recommend is, especially, regarding friends you make online, a lot of them are far away geographically, but a lot of them, will be within driving distance. And if you find any of those, I would say get together, take the online friendship into the real world and hang out if you can. There's a lot of, you got to figure, there's some people are worried about, doxing themselves or, revealing names and locations. But if it's someone that you trust and you're close with, then I would say try to make it a real friendship offline. And it can even span long distances, just like the Hawaii trip. That worked out great.
Yeah, that was people from all across the country that met up in an even further place. So,
and even if you're only meeting a couple times a year, sometimes people who are like real world normal friends are, depending on where you live and what's going on in people's lives, sometimes it's not that often you do see each other. It can be only a few times in the year. So like, it's just as much, you're being just as much a friend that you met online that you have to go meet somewhere, but you're in constant communication, but then you maybe actually only physically meet up a couple of times. That may not be that different from somebody you think you feel like you're seeing them more often, but actually you're not. And if you actually thought about how often you get to see them, it obviously depends people's place. But yeah, when you...
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, but when you meet someone for real that you get friendly online, it's great. It's really good. I've never had a bad experience with it at all. It's always been the opposite.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, the
except for Keith, but yeah.
Yeah, that was a bad experience. No, that was a great experience.
Yeah.
At least I thought so. So,
Yeah, no, it was great.
uh,
Yeah, so like today I have there's a guy who he lives about, he lives down in town. I'm up in the mountains. He lives about 5-6 miles away. And I was saying that yeah, so I've got a guy I've known for maybe a year and a half or so, but he's a local guy, Swedish guy who is living here working in tech, and he's got a family, and he's coming up to my place, and we're going to camp out. He's got 2 boys, about around the same age as my kids, so we're gonna have a little camp out. We've had a few, play dates or whatever, or just hanging out sessions, and so now we're gonna camp. And so, but something like that is one way to bring it into your life. If there's somebody who's nearby who's who meshes with you, just do things like that. So it should be pretty cool.
yeah. The one thing I wanted to mention too is like Kevin said that like a lot of your regular friends in throughout your life, like you're only maybe seeing them a handful of times a year. Like I have my friends that I grew up with, and we text all the time, but we maybe only get together 2 or 3 times throughout the year. Everyone's kind of, we don't live close by anymore, which is the big reason. Mm-hmm. But when you think about that, that's the what are you doing when you're talking to people online? It's mainly just texting them. Even if it's like a tweet or replying to a tweet or DM or something like that, it's just text conversations. And a lot of your friends that you've just had from growing up or school or whatever, they're all it's text conversations, unless you're getting on the phone with them, which I know some people like to do, but most commonly it's just texting people back and forth if they're not close by. I mean, I have other friends that live close by, and we get together almost every week and do something. But I would say for a large portion of people, it's just you're going back and forth in text, which is no different than talking with someone online. Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of where you met, whether you met through the internet or in person somehow.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that reminds me, I would, because people forget this too, I would add, meet up with your old friends, those people who you, maybe they live, maybe it's like a bit of an inconvenience. It's like a 30-minute drive. One sec, let me get this dog away. Minnie, go get a ball. Go get a ball. Sorry, got a border collie here. She just demands that I throw things. But yeah, I would apply this to your real life friends as well, because people neglect their old friends. I mean, I know I do it. People who live really nearby, and we just, for some reason, we don't get together. We text, but it's only a couple times a year. You could probably do more.
Yeah, it comes down, and it's always a matter of making the effort. I feel like that's something that I'm pretty good at with like my group of friends. Like if I'm around, I'll always just throw out the opportunity to hang out or something. Even if it doesn't know, everybody's schedules are kind of different. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the thing is, you always got to make the effort to make it happen. And it's very easy to get caught up in your own life, and you're doing your own thing, and there's not necessarily a lot of overlap, but you got to put the time in, because you see it all the time. Like you could have a really good friend your best friend from high school is probably not your best friend now, unless you really kept up with it. Yeah. Same thing, best friend from college or whatever. Unless you put the time in to keep those relationships alive, they kind of dwindle away, and you don't realize it. I mean, people get busy with jobs and kids and their move and all that stuff. So it's not always easy. In fact, it's hard a lot of times, but if you're interested in keeping those friendships alive, which you should be, ideally, you got to put in the effort to do it.
I mean, that's one of the regrets that you hear from older people. I know I talked to my grandpa, who's he's 95 now, and when I talk to him, he tells me that one of his biggest regrets is just drifting away from friends. He doesn't really have. I mean, at this age, the age is a factor because a lot of people just haven't made it, but he just doesn't have too many friends left, and the ones he did have, he just kind of drifted away from. And that's one of his major regrets, is not maintaining contact. And thing is, it's like, that can happen. You mentioned it. You don't notice it happening. It's just a very gradual process that slowly unfolds under your nose in your subconscious. You're the withering away of the relationship. And so you got to just kind of be proactive. Now, Keith, do you find that are you the one of your friends that are you the one that calls people and sets things up? Are you the one that maintains relationships across the entire group? There usually is that, one or two guys that has that role, I've found.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily calling people, but I will. It's even something as simple as like, hey, anybody around this weekend? And then people are like, I'm here. I'm around like Sunday afternoon, but I got plans Friday and Saturday or whatever. And like I said, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. So I can't say I'm like I'm not the only one that does that, but I'm probably more likely than anybody else to do that.
You're being the stimulus. If you're the one bringing it forward, you're starting the conversation about it. Yeah. Otherwise, another week just goes by. Yeah.
Yeah. Some other friends also do that, but I maybe do it a higher proportion of the time than anyone. And I don't know. I don't know if I've just been lucky or it's something. It sounds egotistical to say, but I don't know if I've been lucky or if it's something about me or my personality. But I have groups of friends, like my group of friends that I grew up with from like being a very little kid, like 2 years old, all through elementary school, middle school, high school. I'm still really close with those guys. Like I haven't grown away from my childhood friends. And then my group of friends that I got really close to in college, I also haven't grown away from them either. And my college friends, a lot of them live close by because we all went to a state school. So we stayed in New Jersey. But my friends that I grew up with, like, I'm the only one that still lives in the state we grew up in. Everybody else is in a different state now. But I've just been, like I said, either lucky or there's something about the friendships like that I've been able to make where they kind of stay together for a longer period of time. Like I don't see them. I mean, of course, I've had friends that have drifted off and I don't talk to anymore from high school or college or whatever. But really, like the core groups of friends, like my best friends, have lasted my whole lifetime. Which part
of this is your personality, though, because you're able to function in different contexts. So you're not going to drift away from people. You're able to stay friends in the different contexts with each type of person. And it's like we were talking about this in the dexterity videos, that kind of not being rigid or fixed or one-dimensional like that. Some people just can't. If they've just got this one thing, when you grow up or you get older or whatever, they can't really stay friends with two. Like some people just can't be friends with two people who are totally opposed to each other in some way. I don't mean like real enemies. I just mean they're just like so different. And other people can function in both of them. And it's not a problem for the other people. They're just seen as the person who's able to do that. They're not seen as like traitor going from camp to camping. Or Paul Publisher has a word for people like this on Twitter. Pocahontas people. so you can go from one thing to another, something like that. It's a Pocahontas person, something like this, and it's the type of person. It's true. So he was talking about it in the context of those are the ones in the patchwork age can go from, they're like the stitching between the patchworks, so they can go from one to another, and they kind of bind it together by being like that. But that's a minority number of people.
I
most
had
people
a
aren't like
conversation last Saturday with Paul and Hayden. They asked me to do talk about like the patchwork thing. So I one of the things that Paul said about me was that I was I had a higher tolerance for I forget the word, higher tolerance for ambiguity or something along those lines than other people. And maybe that's
uncertainty, I think it was it.
Uncertainty. Yeah. So maybe that was, maybe those things are related, was what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't know. There's something, I've been able to keep those friendships, not because of necessarily because I have the same opinions and everything with my friends. I actually differ from my friends in a lot of opinions, political views, all these things. But there's something more core there that like the friendship is more important than any of that stuff. I'm often just like the crazy guy too, so they're accepting of that, which is great.
I would to anyone listening, I would say, you could be that, within your group of friends, and I would urge you to, because one thing I've noticed is that there's always this resistance to, a lot of people have a resistance to maybe seeming too needy or too wanting, like, oh, I don't want to be the guy that calls, that texts my friend and asks to hang out or something, or go on a hike. But I think almost everybody wants someone to ask them to hang out and to get together. I know I certainly do. It's always a pleasure when a friend out of the blue contacts me and says, oh, it's been a while. Let's go hang out, or, let's have dinner or something. And so I would say, I would urge anyone listening to this who maybe has, I would urge anyone listening to this to be a little more like Keith, and be that stitching between the groups. Call your friend, text your friend, whatever, and try to get a little hangout going, because it really is important.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get hung up on being rejected by a friend. Like they take it harder than it needs to be. Like if I asked if my friends want to get together and they got other plans or they're doing something, I'm like, okay, that's fine. Yeah. It was out there for if anybody wanted to, but exactly. You kind of got to get over the fact that it's just you're not gonna get a yes all the time.
If it's every weekend, there might be a problem. But now and again, obviously, it's people have stuff to do, and sometimes somebody asks you to do something you don't want to do. It's not convenient for whatever reason, or it's a hassle. You're really just not in the mood, but you've already agreed. So you kind of go. Almost always in those times, you're glad that you went once you've gone. It's very rare that you're like, I really wish I hadn't gone to that. It's just hardly ever happens.
Yeah. I've never thought that, really. Yeah.
So once that happens a few times, you realize, oh, this is just one of those times. I'll be fine when I get there. You just kind of tell yourself, and then you like it, and that the same's happening to other people. When you're saying that to them, they probably can't be. You're like, let's go and do this thing, and then you're the one phoning them, and they haven't, like prodding them to hurry up or whatever, and it's the same for them too. But someone has to say something, or they'll just play on their phone and sit online, and there's too many things to do now to stop you being bored. I know.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, I just remember in my home village. I just remember when the people were talking about how empty the local pub would be. At one point, it just suddenly got empty, and all the young people weren't going out. It was like it used to be just everyone who was like old enough or was thought old enough was allowed in. would go and they would just be like mobbed or whatever. And then it just suddenly wasn't, and people couldn't understand why they weren't going stuff. And it was social media. It's as simple as that. They just, that urge, will I go out and speak to people? Nah, and it gives you the little dopamine hit. Have a quick chat online, and then you just don't go. And then it makes it easy for you not to go. You're not like, it's the same principle actually that takes people into porn. It means they won't make the effort to go out and try and meet someone because it's kind of just enough to stop them. It's the same idea. I don't know, is this dopamine or something else that's flowing through you?
A lot of stuff going on, but I found that everybody's kind of waiting for somebody to speak, to speak up and to invite or to put forward some, suggest some outing. Everybody's waiting for that. So it just takes, you just got to get out and do it. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. And if it doesn't work out one time, I mean, that shouldn't be a detractor from trying it again or asking again, or just timing works out better sometimes for certain activities. There's something about, like, I see what you're saying, Kevin, about like people, they have the conversation online, so they don't feel like they got to go out as more, or meet with people in real life as more. But there's something about it's just a better experience in person. Just the jokes are better, the conversation is better. People are like, you're more in the moment, like a text you could see and you could ignore, put off till later. But you can't do that in person, or hopefully you wouldn't ignore someone when they're with you in person. You're just engaged is what I mean. And that brings with it like a certain like spirit of engagement, like everybody's together and you're all feeding off the same energy and having a good time, and maybe you're eating a meal, you're having drinks or something, and that's all building into the experience that you just don't get through something online.
Your brain needs some kind of touching as well, just like little touches here and there, your hand, somebody like it's
pat on the shoulder or whatever, and
just tiny things where you just might be silent for a while and you just like that kind of you do something with your hand on your friend's shoulder or whatever, and it's like something's just been said and that will last maybe 30 seconds, a minute. That's you're communicating, and then you're talking about the next thing, and there's something in you needs that, like if babies need stroked a certain amount of times, or it makes them, it's not good for them if they don't get a certain amount of it. Why would that not continue when we're older? It's just as deeper.
Yeah, you just got to remember that is just the ancient, natural way of being in the world is with other people. You just can't replace that with anything else. So yeah, you got to keep that going.
Yeah. I find it's a lot harder to be funny if you're not in person. Like I can make jokes. Like if you're in person, you could essentially just have a certain look on your face, and it's funny. Like based on the context of how people are. Like I guess the context is what it is. It matters a lot. Is because that setting, like everybody knows about that setting a little bit because they're a part of it. If you're online, then it's harder to come across. Back to, I mean, I'm driving back into an earlier point that maybe you made, Eric, or maybe it was Kevin, I can't remember. But the extremes that people go to online to gain attention. Like you don't have to do that in person. You don't have to be so extreme. You could be more subtle or more nuanced in what you're talking about or joking about, because there is that shared context in person where it's not the same online, or it's a different context. So you aren't driven to the extremes as much because one, the extremes could be really polarizing. So if you're only with like one or two other people and they're not feeding into that extreme, then you kind of have to temper yourself and take on their perspective just to get along with them in that situation. And I said one, but there's not a part two. That was all I had for that idea. So
I'm not cutting it in later. You're going to have to just leave the gap.
That's fine. The audience is going to be upset, but maybe that'll keep them
cliffhanger
coming in next week too, or the week after.
Keith Hanger. Yeah.
Keith Hanger.
Yeah. Keith Hanger. Yeah. Trademark.
But yeah, like the comedy stuff. So like the funniest person I've ever known was like, it was slapstick kind of humor. It's obviously impossible online. It's like there's just that physical based humor. Integrated with wit and ridiculous stories and stuff. But it was like you can't really abstract the stories and the wit from the physicality. It's really is like a really psychophysical humor actually to be.
It wouldn't translate online probably.
No. It would just look mad online. Well, it looks a bit mad offline as well, but and there's like an energy thing or whatever. It's hard to describe. And so like because like the humor online can get very, very. It gets like it gets more and more. Like it goes like smaller and smaller circles. The humor, it's not expanding humor, and then it just becomes kind of weird or neurotic or something. So there's something like that open-ended. You need a kind of open-endedness for real humor. I think you can't. And the problem with online is it's too closed, or it takes you more and more closed. But I guess for you guys, it's different now. Like having met in real life and stuff and done things, there's another layer of humor you can have now online because now it's different now. It's not the same as just guys that you know online only.
Tell you what, my humor online is a lot different because it's basically just focused on GIFs as opposed to anything else.
Well, you did a lot of charades in Hawaii.
I was acting out the GIFs. But, they didn't come
it was okay. It was cool. It was pretty cool, but it wasn't the same effect.
No, yeah.
Hologram humor.
Yeah, and even my I don't know, what jokes are going to hit with certain people. So you're more likely to like yuck up that side of yourself when you're around people just because it's more fun or whatever.
Yeah.
And like some people just aren't going to get that humor. So you get, ease off the gas pedal on that type of stuff. So I don't know. It comes back to that context again. Like, in certain contexts when you're in a context with someone, like you can be a certain way, and it's not necessarily you're not necessarily being a different person, but you're just you're giving those areas, letting some areas of yourself shine and other areas not, just based on what's appropriate for the people you're with. The thing is, online is you don't have that type of context, so you decide your context for being online, and then other people find out whether they resonate with it or not. So there's not, at least it's like a lot of it's just a one-way thing, and then the people that do like it kind of mirror that back to you somehow. But it's different. Like I said, it's two different worlds to try to be a part of, and it's probably probably going to be an importance. I mean, it is. I mean, it's just in like before the internet, it was a lot of people. They had like their personality at work, and you had to be a certain way at work, or if you went to church, you acted a certain way. But like if you're home, you could be I don't know, a little more or a little less serious, or like if you're the boss of a company and you have to play that role. You have to be in that role a little bit. And it doesn't mean that you're being disingenuous. It just means that you have a role to fulfill. And
you contain
kind of,
multitudes, you know?
yeah.
It's the old Whitman line. Yeah, I think we've always had that aspect. We've always had that ability as humans, is to in multitudes. So yeah, I don't think it's anything new. The degree might be a little new.
Yeah.
The intensity of the experience online might be new, but like there's a concept called like code switching. I don't know if you've heard that. It's the same kind of thing.
Code switching, like
yeah. I don't know. It's people who
code.
Code, yeah.
Code. Okay.
I've heard that phrase before, and I think it's like speaking. It's basically speaking differently at work, at school, with your family, with your friends. You almost become a different person. I have a friend who grew up in Mexico. He lives here now, but when like we're hanging out, and then like a friend from Mexico will call him, and he gets on the phone, he becomes a different person. You know, and he's speaking Spanish, and so I understand a little bit, but you can tell it's just he's a different personality. It's almost like not schizophrenic, but it really is like he has multiple personalities based on the language. I think that's an extreme example of what you're talking about.
There's even a little bit of that, when people doesn't even need to be a different language, just when they slip into their old stronger accent. So they're speaking to people over here, and then they speak to someone from their home, and it'd be like, it's quite shocking to some people when they hear it. But the person really doesn't usually notice at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have that, right, Kevin?
Yeah. Yeah. People always have commented on it. Yeah. Or like when I'd go up north and then come back, people would always, when I was living in England, I would go north, even if it was only for like 2 weeks. And then I'll come back, and the first week would be people constantly, what? Pardon? Can you say that again? For the whole first week, when I go back? And it was years before I realised, okay, I need to put the posh voice back on. I've got the posh voices now. This is it. This is as good as it gets.
How do we get the northern Kevin? To hear that?
I probably need to just hang around with some friends for a week or so, and then it would be, and then I'll do a podcast from the local pub.
Okay,
try that one.
I asked him to say "purple burglar alarm" a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I could. I'm not going to do it again, but I could.
It was the entire episode was him trying to.
There's a positive side of this that I wanted to bring up, that like the being able to be a different person in different scenarios. I mean, like if you're called into a certain sort of action, and to be able to meet that call, like I think like the extreme example is like someone gets called into having to like a knight gets called into having to like save the town or whatever. So that's like an archetypal example. Like you have to face the evil. Like you want to be able to bring forth the personality in yourself that is going to be able to meet that occasion, to meet the call to adventure or courage or whatever it may be. So, I mean, there's a positive aspect of this, that like people are able to be a little bit different in different situations, and it almost allows you to be a little bit more than yourself in those situations, because you've let one aspect of your personality shine through to meet the occasion more than a different aspect that wouldn't match it so well. So like there is I don't know. That came to mind. Like there are positive. It's not like you're skin changing or like you're
fake. I think that's more real than anything. Like I said, I think that's human. That's extremely human. That's a unique human trait, the ability to change skins, and I think it's positive, like you said, or it has the potential.
Yeah.
To be,
well, it's kind of like it's neutral, but people can use it in good or bad ways, because there's like two-faced people too that say one thing to your face and then go behind your back, and that's just a bad person. But So yeah, there's ways that it manifests in both positive and negative manners.
It's simply a human trait, I think.
Yeah.
Just like a fist, you can use it to, I don't know, shake hands with a friend, or knock somebody out. It goes both
Based
ways.
on the context. Sometimes you knock someone out and then you shake hands.
Yeah. Exactly.
And you're saying, Keith, there about the sort of like a different side of their personality can come out. It's not just expressing a different part of your personality that's already inside you. It's also like reaching out to like an archetype that's outside of you. So like someone like you're using the knight, you can, or there's the whole idea of heroes, I suppose, as well. It makes the person, the situation makes the person more than they were before, because they have this thing to reach out to. Sort of kind of unfold something in them, but they've become more, it appears between them and the situation that they have, or whatever the issue, the problem is, or whatever, that will reveal itself. But it wasn't just inside them. It's kind of more, part of it is obviously, but it's more complex. And you have to be in more situations for those things to come out. Otherwise, you're just going to be the same all the time. So like your multitudes, to be multitudes, you need to be in new situations to reveal and unfold your multitudes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really want to draw this right back to where we began this talk, it's Erik asked, how do you kind of implement what you learn online into your life? That like those certain things are like life reaching out to you and saying, here, grab my hand and come in this direction a little bit. And you do that and you try it on, and you like, that's your invitation right there to try something. Obviously, if you've shown interest, or it interests you, it piques your interest, it's saying, it says that there's something there. So
the
you got
algorithm of the universe,
What's that?
The algorithm of the universe is reaching out to you, I think.
Yeah, and it's got an open thread, and it wants you to pull the thread and find out what's there. But it comes back to the person again. Like, you have to be willing to pull the thread if you're going to find out if there's anything on the other end of it.
So if someone's listening to this right now and they say they have like lots of online friends, say it's on Twitter, they have all these online friends, but they haven't actually met anyone in real life yet. How would any ideas for suggesting people what they could do to initiate the meeting offline?
Yes, I know exactly what. You book an Airbnb in Hawaii,
Big Island,
and you invite these people, and they all go and meet up there. So very simple, cost-effective, efficient. It's a perfect plan for anybody to do.
Yep. I would say get sort of outside communication going, whether it's just a DM, like a group chat on Twitter, or exchange phone numbers and start texting, or maybe just do a call, like a Zoom call or something.
So take it outside of the app or whatever you're using. So now you kind of know them in two levels. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. Yeah.
There's a certain level of trust there too, and I think that's like a kind of your next step of kind of making it more real, because you could have a reply to people on Twitter, or even DM on Twitter. But if you, like Erik said, if you exchange like a phone number, that's a little bit more personal. So it shows that you're extending a little bit of trust in both directions. Or even email, or if someone's anonymous and they give you their real name or something, it just gives that's one step in like saying, okay, maybe this is like, it's an actual friendship. It's not just like two online acquaintances.
Yes.
So any one of those things are, I don't know. It's the key thing that I wanted to mention is just, it shows a level of trust that like this is like it's something not public anymore. So it's like Yeah.
So it's an element of risk then. I mean, like it's relatively small risk, but in online world, it's big risk if you're anonymous. So you're revealing yourself slightly in the same way as you become better friends with somebody if they take a risk for you, or they, that's part of, or knowing that they would take a risk for you is part of it. So that's kind of the first step from online. It's very like small or whatever, but it's kind of abstract, but it's real to the person. It really does. I trust this guy enough not to tell people that I live in this small town that now people can maybe start finding me and I've been saying weird shit online. Or he might turn up here or whatever. He's not too weird. Or if he turns up, it's okay. So like because that's a thing where people, if you know people in more than one context, you start becoming more friends with them. And there's also like, there's that thing where if people tell stories and then you break off the story to tell another story and then you go back to the story and it makes you feel like you know the person more because that's the kind of way friends talk, you interrupt each other, you go off on a tangent and anyway, so back that, and then you finish the story or whatever. Whereas like formal relationships, you don't really do that. It's a bit like that, but in the context of, you now have that kind of thing going on with this person because you're speaking to them maybe on Twitter, on replying to each other's tweets, but you're also having DMs back and forward. You'd also like the occasional Zoom call or whatever. And then if you're meeting up, so you have this it's multiple layers of the kind of interaction you're having with the person. And you're just it's becoming more and more real, deeper and deeper until it actually is real. And it always heads that way. It goes that way. So once you know somebody in a few ways online, all of a sudden you're meeting them.
Yep.
If it's practical or you're planning, you're going to meet them. That's another thing. So there's a whole bunch of people that I know I will be meeting, but it just hasn't happened yet. But it's not like it's a certainty.
Kevin, come on! It's hard to get to Cyprus from New Jersey, so it'll happen eventually. I know
the far end of the swim is quite. It's warm. The last part of the swim is warm. You'll be fine. Okay. You've got strength, endurance, dexterity. You're fine. Thank you. Speed.
I would also say that people should realize that this online stuff. It really, it's real. Like online friends. I've realized that it is real friendship, and don't discount it. Don't shortchange it. Take it seriously, and it can blossom into a beautiful thing.
Yeah. It's good to have people interested in the same stuff you are, because like I said, it doesn't always happen just by the friends that you grew up with or were put together with in different situations. So I suppose that could be bad if you're both interested in terrible things, but most people are not interested in terrible things.
But the beauty is that if you're interested in it, you don't think it's terrible. So,
yeah. No, I meant like there's like subcultures that are just interested in terrible stuff.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah,
they're just evil people.
Yeah.
So anyway, I didn't mean to put a damper on that, but yeah. All right. Well, the video is about to run out. You guys got any last thoughts, or you want to call it a day on this one?
No, just anyone listening, if you want to meet anyone talking, get in touch. So
get in touch.
Yeah, no weirdos though. I don't want any weirdos.
No weirdos. This is why I surround myself with water. I think of the med as a moat, keeping people out of the castle, So but you're welcome within reason.
Yep. All right. Thanks guys. Good talking.
All right, guys.